All right, guys, hello. We are doing composition of functions today. I'm going to try to keep the notes relatively short. You do have extra examples and help videos though available on Delta Math when you get to your assignment. So we're going to start off just with a little bit of review. If you are trying to find f of a particular value using a chart or a graph, okay, remember that you are going to that spot on the graph and then giving the y value. So for example, if this is graph f, then you would say like f of, let's say, 4. Okay, this is your x value. And then remember that the answer is going to be the y value at that point. So if I wanted, let's say, f of 4, like we said right there, I trace out here to 4 and then see how low the graph is. That would be -1. Okay. What if I wanted f of, let's say, 0? Then I would go here to 0 right in the middle. How many up would I have to go? I see my dot is at 4. Okay, so just quick little recap on that before we get into the questions that are below that. So you have several properties that you're going to be working with today. So the first one is going to be the addition property. So if you have f plus g of a particular value, you're going to basically bring the x into both of those. So it would be like f of x plus g of x. Okay, subtraction works the same way. If you have f minus g at some particular value, you would share that value. So it'd be f of x minus g of x. Okay, now remember, where are we going to get these numbers from? We're going to use our charts. So let's look at number 1 and number 2 to go along with that. I see that I'm looking for f plus g of -1. Then I'm going to break that into f of -1 plus g of -1. Then I would take a look at both graphs. Remember, this is my f graph here. So then I would trace back to -1. I see my y value there is 3. Then I would go to my second value. I want g of -1. That would be this graph over here. I would go back to -1. Remember, between the two dots that are presented, I want to choose the closed dot always, which is at a height of 2. And then just perform the operation in the middle. So 3 plus 2, answer is 5. Okay, question right next to it. You'll notice it's a subtraction in the middle. So I'd have f of 3 minus g of 3. And then using your two charts, you're going to find f of 3, find g of 3, and then subtract those numbers. So f of 3, that's this graph here. Trace out to 3. I notice I'm staying right there on the x-axis. That would be 0. Minus, then I come over to this graph. Okay, g of 3 would be right here. And I notice that since I'm down 1 box, that would be -1. Now, you also should know, just from kind of like algebra 1, algebra 2, that a minus a negative is really a plus. So if I put this into the calculator, 0 minus -1 is really 0 plus 1, which is 1. Okay, but also grab a calculator if you want, that's no problem. Okay, the same properties apply for multiplication and division. So if you have a dot like this, that means f times g of x. So you're going to do f of x multiply g of x. Okay, and that dot right there means multiply. Okay. Division works the same way. You're going to share the x with both functions. So it'd be f of x divided by g of x. Okay. So let's do number 3. Okay, take a look at your equation. You're asked to find f dot g of 0. So that's going to be f of 0 times g of 0. Then I'm going to go to both of my charts, find those values. So f of 0 on my first graph, I actually found that at the beginning here. Okay, f of 0 was 4. And then g of 0, I would come over to this graph. Remember, g is my second graph. 0 would be at a height of 1. And then I'll take those two numbers and I'll just multiply. So it'd be 4 times 1, which is 4. Okay, one more like that. I want f dot g of -1. Well, then that's f of -1 times g of -1. Remember, that little dot means multiply. Then I'll come over here to -1 on my f graph. I see my numbers 3. Come over here to my g graph. My height is at 2. Remember, I'm choosing the closed dot, not the open dot. And then 3 times 2 is 6. So pretty much find the values and then do the operation in the middle. Okay, next one, let's do number 5. Okay, so I want f divided by g of 5. Well, then I'm going to share that 5 with both functions. So it'd be f of 5 divided by g of 5. And then I'm going to look at my chart. F of 5 is way over here at the end of the graph. That is a closed circle at a height of -2. Versus g of 5, if I come over to this graph, 5 is here. My y value is down 1, which would be -1. And then if I divide -2 and -1, we get +2. Okay, for this part, please use a calculator. Okay, if you're not sure, if that's not your thing with the arithmetic, then just use calculator. Okay, next one here, I want f of -1 divided by g of -1. So -1 on my f graph, we've already found that before. It came out to be a 3 up here. And then g of -1 came out to be a 2 over here. So then that'd be 3 divided by 2. And if 3 would divide by 2, go ahead and do it. Okay, but if it won't divide, then just leave it as a fraction. Okay, as far as your practice goes. Okay, last two, I want f over g of 3. Well, then I'm going to do f of 3 divided by g of 3. So if you will, please look at your graph of f at 3. Find the y value. Let's come up here and take a peek. Okay, 3 is here. I'm on the x-axis. That's a 0. And then if I look at my graph of g at 3, hopefully you can see we're on that flat step here. The y value is -1. Okay, now when you are dividing 0 by -1, put it in the calculator. 0 divided by anything is 0. Okay, where you cannot have 0 is on the bottom. So let's look at the next question. Okay, for this one, I want g over f of -3. So I'm going to share that number with both. Also, make sure this is the first example where g was the top function, but just follow whatever order is presented in the question here. Okay. Then I'm going to find g of -3, f of -3, and then divide. So take a look at g of -3. I'm going to go up to the graph real quick. Okay, -3 would be here. I have to trace down. That's a -3 for my y value. And then -3 on this graph. You can't really see it, but the line, there's another little step right here. Okay, so if you want to draw that in here, there's another little step there going to the left. And so since -3 is on the x-axis, that would be a 0 value. So we're doing -3 divided by 0. Okay, and then you should know that you are not allowed to divide by 0. So our answer there would be undefined. Okay. One kind of easy way for you to remember that is that it's okay to get 0 on the top, but no, you can't get 0 on the bottom. That's when it's undefined. Okay, so if you want to just make a note of that, okay, 0 on the top is okay, your answer is 0, but no, you can't get 0 on the bottom, undefined. Okay, go ahead and turn the page, please. The other function that we're going to talk about today is compositions. Okay, and compositions are a little bit confusing, but hopefully once we do a couple examples, you'll have the right idea. So this is an open circle. That's what a composition is. So if it's F and then a little circle G, that is not a multiply dot, that's a composition dot. And here's what it means. You're going to do, excuse me, F of G of X. Okay, the closer function stays closer to your X. And then your F goes outside of that. Okay, and basically what you're going to do is take turns. Okay, what number you're plugging into what function. So for example, let's look at number 9. You have F composition G of 4. Well, then that would be F of G of 4. And then what you're going to do is find G of 4 using the G graph. So let's do that now. So G of 4, I'd be right here. I'm on that flat step, which means that G of 4 is -1. And then I'm going to take that number and plug it into F. So you're going to find this number first. It came out to -1, and then plug that into the other function F. So then now I'm coming over here to function F, -1 is here, and I see that my Y value is 3. Okay, let's do another one like that. Number 10, I want F composition G of -2. Well, then that's F parentheses G parentheses -2. And then remember, you're going to start on the inside, work your way outside. So I'm going to find G of -2 first. And then when I find that number, I'm going to plug it in to F. So let's see what this is in the middle. G of -2, I'm looking at this graph. Remember, this one is my F of X graph. This was my G of X graph off the first page. So G of -2, I'd be down here at -2. And then I'm going to take that number and plug it into F. So then I'm coming over here to F at -2. Remember, we said there is a step function here that you just can't see. So if I'm at -2, my Y value would be 0. Okay, 2 more like that. Next one, I want G composition F. Now notice the order here has changed, but we still are going to work it the same way. Don't change the order on these letters. If G comes first, you let G come first and F comes second when you write it. Okay, so whatever order they are here, that's the order that you should rewrite. Okay, but then remember, you're not doing it in the order you wrote it. You're going from the inside out. So if I want F of 5, I'm looking at the F graph first. I would trace out here to 5. I see my Y value is a -2. And then I'm going to take that -2 and plug it into G. Remember, G is going to be your second graph. So then I'd come over here to G, go back to -2. Answer is -2. Take a look at number 12. Notice your order for this one is the same, that the G comes first, followed by the F. So then I'm going to find my F of -4. Then once I know whatever that number is, I'll plug that result into function G second. So F of -4, that's the first graph. -4 is here. So I see my Y value would be a 0. Then I'm finding G of 0. Okay, but remember, you're working your way from the inside out when you're evaluating. So G of 0, then here I see that that would be a 1. Okay. Now we're not going to do both of these bottom 2, but I do just want to point out to you that you can composition a function with itself. So let's say, for example, that we were doing F composition F again, then you would still say, okay, well then I have F of 3. Just follow the same order you see here. You'll find the inside function first. And then you'll plug that in to F again. But the only reason you're using the F graph for both is because you're compositioning F with its own self. So let's find F of 3. F of 3 in my graph is right here. So that would be 0. And then put your 0 right here. And then now that I want F of 0, I'm going to go back to the same graph again, but now I'm at 0. Looking for the Y value, I see that it's up here at 4. So F of 0 is 4. Okay. So that is how you do it with graphs. Okay, if you look on the next page, you'll notice that you have some other types of questions. So let's take a peek at those, please. Number 15, you'll notice that you have a graph here and a chart. Okay, so if I want F composition G of 7, then I'm going to follow the same order, F of G of 7. And then remember, I'm going to actually evaluate these from the inside out. So I'm looking for G of 7 first. My chart is F, my graph is G, so I'm using this one. And then G of 7 would be right here at a height of 3. But then remember, we're not done. Now we have to go to 3 on function F. So then my X is a 3 here. Then my F value is 0. Okay, so it's kind of the same. If you have a chart, you're just looking for X in the X column and then giving the Y value from here. Take a look at number 16. F composition G of 10. Well, then that'd be F of G of 10. Remember, inside out. So I'm starting with my G of 10. Okay, so come over here to your G graph. 10 is way out here. My Y value, it looks like, is a 6. But then I have to plug that into graph F. Or in this case, chart F. So then I would come over here to 6. I see my Y value is 15. Okay. Take a look at the next one. Notice that your order is reversed. Okay, this time G is going to come first, then F. But remember that the way you write it is not the way you evaluate it. You work inside out. So I'm going to find F of 2 first, then take that result, plug it into G. F of 2 is my chart. So I would come over here to 2. I see my Y value is a -5. And then I'm going to plug that into G. Then look at your graph G. -5 is over here. So I see my Y value is -3. Okay. All right, let's do just one from that bottom row. Let's say that we're doing this one right here. So remember, you can composition a function with its own self. It's no problem. You're going to G of -6. Okay, that means that for this one, both times I'm using the chart for G. I'm going to find -6 first. So -6, it looks like, is over here. My Y value is -2. But then I'm going to plug that into G again. So then I'd come up here to -2 and see that my Y value is down here at -6. Okay. All right. So we have a couple more examples down here. We're not going to do all of them. Notice that we've done compositions with a chart, with a graph. The last type is going to be doing them with an equation. So notice that your equations are listed for you right here. But you're asked to work the same type of questions that we were doing with graphs and charts. So let's say that I'm doing number 21. Well, then I want F plus G of 2. Then I'm going to share the 2 with both. So now I want F of 2 plus G of 2. Okay, and then you should know this from algebra 2, but just in case you don't remember, f of 2 means to take the number 2 and plug it into the f formula. So if f of x is 2x, then f of 2 would be me putting a 2 in that spot. So I'm going to write it over here to the side. F of 2 would be 2x, but with a 2 plugged in as your x value. And then 2 times 2, that's going to give me a 4 plus. Next, I want g of 2. Well, look at your g formula right here. It's x minus 6. Then I would take my 2 and plug it in right there. So g of 2 would be 2 minus 6. Okay. And then if you have a calculator, you should be able to figure out 2 minus 6 is negative 4. Okay. But then what am I ultimately doing with the 4 and the negative 4? Okay, we're adding those, so that would give you 0. Because you get plus or minus the same number. Okay. Let's take a look at the next one, number 22. This time, instead of a plus, I want a minus. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to do f of 4 minus g of 4. Right? Because I'm just sharing the 4 into both of those. But then if I want to find f of 4, I have to come up to this equation and put a 4 in that spot. So I would have f of 4 equals, the formula is a 2x. Well, then now it's a 2 times 4, which gives me 8. Next, I want g of 4, which means I'm using that second formula. So g of 4 here is going to be x minus 6, but I'm putting a 4 in the x spot, minus 6. And 4 minus 6 is going to give me negative 2. Okay. And I think we did an example with this already, but remember that anytime that it's minus a negative, that's going to be the same as plus. Okay. Anytime it's minus a negative, that's the same as plus a positive. So then 8 plus 2, that's going to give me 10. Okay. All right, we have one with division right behind that. I want f divided by g of 10. Well, then that's going to be f of 10 divided by g of 10. And then remember, to find these values, you're just plugging into your equation. So my f of 10 would be 2 times 10. And I know that 2 times 10, that's going to give me a 20 on top. Then I want g of 10. Then I'm plugging in 10 to the g equation, which would be x minus 6. But remember, if I put the 10 in the x spot, now it's 10 minus 6, okay, which is 4. And then remember, if my overall operation is division, then I would just divide those. So 20 divided by 4, that gives me 5. Now, let's say that these numbers couldn't divide evenly, then remember, you would just leave it as a fraction. So like, let's say you got 20 divided by 3, well, then just leave it as 20 over 3 for your practice. Okay. All right, your bottom row is compositions. Okay, so let's look at how you would do this with compositions. Number 24 is f composition g of 8. So then I would say, okay, then I want f of g of 8. Well, then I'm going to take my 8 and I'm going to plug it into the closer function first, because remember, we work compositions from the inside out. So g of 8 is going to be the first thing that I'm going to find. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to put an 8 in this spot. So g of 8 would be 8 minus 6. Okay, so think about that for a second. If I put an 8 here, 8 minus 6 would be 2. But then I have to take that 2 and now plug it into f. And then your f formula, remember, is 2x. So then if I need to find f of 2, I would just do 2 times 2 and get 4. Okay, so it's a little bit easier with charts and graphs because you're not actually having to plug anything in, but it works the same if it's an equation. Okay, look at number 25. I want G composition f of 8. Well, then that's G of f of 8. But remember that I'm going to start with the inside function and work my way outside. So that means that if the f is closer, I'm starting there. F of 8 means that I'm going to take the number 8 and I'm going to plug it in to the f formula. Okay, so right here, my formula was a 2x. Then f of 8 would be 2 times 8. And then 2 times 8, that would be 16. But then remember, I'm not done. I'm now taking that 16 and then plugging it into the G formula. So then G of 16 here. Remember, the 16 goes into the equation where the x is. So if it's x minus 6, well, then now it's 16 minus 6, which would give me 10. Okay. All right. Hopefully we kind of have the right idea on that. Go ahead and turn the page for me, please. Okay, we're on the last little bit of this. Okay, you can also perform all of these operations that we're talking about without picking a particular value. So, for example, here it says you can perform these with respect to x, not using a specific number. So if I wanted to do this one, I would still share the x and get f of x plus g of x. But then the one thing that would be different is that since I don't have a number to plug in, I would just use the whole formula. So for example, my f of x formula is 2x plus 1. And then my g of x formula, I'm going to seal it from right here. Okay, g of x is 3x minus 6. Okay, and then just like we did on that one unit, you would only combine like terms, which means you're looking for the terms that have the same type of thing with them. So like a 2x and a 3x, that would be 5x. And then a 1 minus 6, that would be a minus 5. Okay. Take a look at the next one. I want f minus g. So I'm going to still share the x. So now it's f of x minus g of x. And then I'm going to take my whole f formula, which is 2x plus 1. And I'm going to minus my whole g formula, which is 3x minus 6. Now, one big potential for error here. When you are adding in the middle, okay, you're just combining like terms. But if you are subtracting, you need to subtract the whole g of x formula. So really, you need to remember that that second formula needs to be grouped with parentheses so that you can bring that negative into both of those terms. So really, this is 2x minus 3x, 2x plus 1 minus 3x, and then minus negative 6 is going to switch that to a plus 6. Then we're looking for which of those can go together. 2x minus 3x is a negative 1x. And then plus 1 and plus 6 would be plus 7. Okay. Number 29, look at your operation in the middle. Okay, if it's a little dot like that, that's a multiply dot. And so if I'm asked to multiply f dot g, that means that I'm doing f of x times g of x. And notice, because this isn't a specific number, I'm just using the full equations rather than trying to plug in some certain number. So my f formula is gonna be a 2x plus 1. And my g formula is still 3x minus 6. And then we would have to obviously FOIL that out. So I would do 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times negative 6 would be a minus 12x. That would be first times first and then outside. Okay, your inside is going to be plus 1 times 3x is a plus 3x. And then plus 1 times minus 6, that would just be a minus 6. Okay. From there, I see that these middle two terms are the same type, they're like terms. So I would say, okay, my 6x squared is going to stay. But if I have negative 12 plus 3, that would be a negative 9x. Oops, and then this was a minus 6. Okay. All right, you are so close to being done. Last little bit of this. What if you get a composition? Okay, these do happen on your practice today. So here's what you're going to do. Okay, remember the little open circle, that's a composition. Okay, if you want G composition F, remember that's going to be G of F of X. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to take the entire formula for F of X, because remember, we don't have a certain number to plug in. We're going to take the whole formula for F of X, and we're going to plug it into G of X. So here's what I mean by that. Do you see right here that your G formula is a 3x minus 6? Well, then I'm going to do 3x minus 6. So I'm using the overall framework of function G, but then in this spot where the X was, I'm going to put my F formula. Okay, and so if you look up there at the top, your F formula was a 2x plus 1. Okay, so you're essentially plugging one formula into the other formula. And then I would say, okay, well, now let's just break this down. So I have a 3 parentheses, 2x plus 1, and then a minus 6. Well, then I can times that 3 in. 3 times 2x is a 6x. 3 times 1 is a plus 3. Minus 6 is right behind that. Notice I'm not going to times the 3 past where the parentheses ends. And then these like terms can combine. 3 minus 6 would be negative 3. Okay. All right, take a look at the next one. This time I want F composition G. Well, then I would do F of G of X. So notice that now the game plan is that I'm going to use my G formula and plug it into my F equation. So remember that your F equation is a 2x plus 1. And then inside of where that X went, I'm going to take my G formula and plug it into that spot. Which what? 3x minus 6. Okay. And then from there, just kind of simplify it to get it into standard form. So 2 times 3x is 6x. 2 times minus 6 is minus 12 plus 1. And then those two constant terms can combine. So negative 12 plus 1, that would be negative 11. Okay, last one like that. This time I want H of F of X. Now you'll notice up here at the top, we haven't used function H yet. Okay, but it's right here. Okay, so your function H is also included. It's x squared plus 8. Okay. So if I want H composition F, that's gonna be H of F of X. That means I'm gonna take the formula for F and I'm gonna plug it into function H. So remember what we said H is X squared plus 8. Then it's gonna be X squared plus 8. And then in that spot where your X number would have gone, you're putting your entire F formula, which was a 2X plus 1. Okay. Now, remember that whenever we had talked about having like a squared like this, remember, I just want you to write it twice. Write it twice and then just times it out. So if it's 2X plus 1 squared, that's really 2X plus 1 times 2X plus 1 again. Okay, and then I do have this plus 8. I'm just going to kind of write it to the side for now. So let's FOIL that out. 2X times 2X is 4X squared. 2X times plus 1 is a 2X. Next term. I'm going to the second one, it's a plus 1. 1 times 2X is 2X. 1 times 1 is plus 1. Okay, then remember behind that, I've been having this plus 8 because it was part of that original formula. So now when I combine like terms, I'm actually going to have two different things that I can combine. My 4X squared is in front. 2X and 2X make 4X. And then plus 1 and plus 8 make plus 9. Okay. All right, go ahead and take a look. We're just gonna do maybe 34 and then see how your homework goes. So go ahead and turn the page. There's a 33 and a 34. We'll just do 34 though. So notice you have two functions, an F and a G. First, we want to do F of G of X, or F composition G. So it's going to go like this. Well, then remember what that means is that I'm taking the formula for G, this, and I'm plugging it in to where the X is. So if it's a 2X plus 1, now it's a 2 something plus 1. And then in that spot, I was writing parentheses around this before. Okay, in the 2X plus 1, I'm putting this entire formula for G. So it'd be X squared plus 5X plus 10. And then I would say, okay, well, how can I get that into standard form? Let's start by distributing. So my 2 times X squared is a 2X squared. 2 times 5X is a 10X. 2 times 10 is a 20. Don't forget your plus 1. And then when you're combining like terms, you would just be looking for the two things that can combine. So I see that I have a 20 and a 1, that would be 21. So 2X squared plus 10X plus 21. Okay. All right, last question in your notes. Take a look at letter B. Same two functions, but now we want G of F. So I'm going to do G of F of X. Which means that now, instead of G plugging into the F formula, I'm going to have F plugging into the G formula. So let's look at my G formula. It's X squared plus 5X plus 10. Well, then it's blank squared plus 5 blank plus 10. So notice that in my G formula, I've got two different X's. Then I've got to leave two different little spots for me to plug in. And then my middle function that I'm inserting is the F function, which is a 2X plus 1. Okay. So then I notice, I've got a squared. That means I need to write it twice. So 2x plus 1 squared is gonna be 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 1 again. Now, if you wanna write all of this other stuff, you can. Yeah, I guess I'll write it though. 2x plus 1 plus 10. Okay, so take your squared, write it twice. And then now our game plan is we're gonna multiply this out, combine like terms, and then we're finished. So 2x times 2x, 2 times 2 is 4, x is now squared. 2x times 1 is a plus 2x. Next term, 1 times 2x is 2x. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, now we're going on to the next term, which is a 5 in front of a parentheses. Well, then I'm still distributing. 5 times 2 is 10x. 5 times 1 is 5. And then I still have that kind of plus 10 in the back. From there, we're looking for our like terms. So I have a 4x squared. That's the only one. Then I'm looking for all my regular x's. I have a 2x, a 2x, and a 10x. 2 plus 2 is 4, 10 more would be 14. And then for my numbers by themselves, I have a plus 1, a plus 5, and a plus 10. So 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 10 more would be 16. Okay. All right. Last thing that I'm gonna do with you right now is give you the option to watch the help video. If you guys as a class feel like you got it, you can ask this up to just pause. Okay, but if you want to do one example off the homework together, then you can go ahead and keep playing. So go ahead and have that little conversation if you need to, and open up your Delta Math, please. So the question that I'm going to work with you guys is going to be one of those last questions that we just did. Okay. And then sub, please feel free to pause this video if they need a minute to get their Chromebooks out. Okay, your assignment for today is not listed. Hang on one second. Your assignment should be polynomial operations algebraically. And then you'll notice this looks kind of long, but a lot of them you're just looking at the graph, okay? So like for this first one here, if you want f plus g of 4, then you would say, okay, what's f of 4? What's g of 4? And then just add them up. So that would be f of 4 plus g of 4. And then you're going to take your 4 and plug it into both of these formulas. Okay, so let's do f of 4 first. F of 4 would be 2 times 4 minus 1. And then I would say, okay, well, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 1 would be 7 plus. Then when I'm trying to do my g of 4, I would say, okay, well, then g of 4 is 4 squared minus 4. 4 squared is 16, and 16 minus 4 would be 12. Then you would take your 7 and your 12, add those up, your answer would be 19. Okay. So for those first questions, you're either adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, or maybe you'll get a composition. Okay, so the answer to question number 1 was 19. Okay, the question though that I really wanted to do with you is the very last question. Okay, so if you'll go ahead and turn to this one. Okay, I'm gonna do this on a sheet of scratch paper. If you need scratch paper, there is a ton over by the little zebra lamp by the window. There's a whole stack of blank scratch paper. Okay. So my question says, this is the very last one on your practice. F of x equals 3x plus 1. G of x equals x squared minus 2x. Okay, and then if you look right here on your screen or on my screen, okay, you're asked to do f of g. F of g. Well, then that means I'm taking the g of x formula and I'm plugging it into the f formula. So instead of being 3x plus 1, it'd be 3 something plus 1. And then I'm going to take that g formula and sub it in. And then I would say, okay, well, how can I put this in standard form? That's what it says on your homework here, standard form. Okay. So then I would do 3 times x squared is 3x squared. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And then plus 1's just kind of chilling behind that. That answer is ready to use. Now notice, why can I just type that one in? Well, because none of those terms can be like combined. Right? Okay. All right, you can do it. That it is right at 45 minutes, so you should have still 45 minutes to finish your practice. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys next week.